So, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a very unique game, just like the first installment into the franchise was as well. It is ultra realistic compared to most other games like it. It's pretty damn tough, and it most certainly does not hold your hand. And so, because of that, I thought I'd go through 7 tips that I think beginners will find useful. Now, the first thing that I think is very important to note, and it was, as far as I remember, the exact same in the first game as well. In order to save in this game, you're actually going to need to make a specific potion, or it's actually technically just an alcoholic beverage called Savior Schnapps, which you will need to brew yourself, or obviously you can buy it from vendors and stuff too. And this is essentially an item you need to use in order to save. Now, there are other ways to save. Sleeping in a bed will save your game, and even just getting through certain parts throughout the story. Hell, even side content, anything that has like a cutscene involved, and then, you know, the cutscene ends and you're off onto the next part of that mission, that will also save your game too. So it's not like this is the only way to save, but it is pretty much the only way to manually save, at least when you're out in the world anyway, because like I said, you can sleep in a bed, but if you're out adventuring and you stumble across some enemies, you can't just go to sleep on the spot. So you need to make sure that you are crafting some Savior Schnapps. It's pretty easy to make. The recipe will be in your inventory once you actually make it into the open world sort of part of the game, about 2 or so hours in. So just make sure to go into your inventory and make sure to learn that. All you'll need to make it is nettle, which is very, very easy to find. And then you'll also need belladonna, which is a bit harder to find. I found some of this near Bojena's house that you will go to during the intro sequence. She'll send you up a pathway at a certain point to get some other ingredients, and along that pathway you can find some belladonna. Now, it is also worth keeping in mind you can just save and quit, and that doesn't use the Savior Schnapps. So that is another really good way to do it if you're just out in the open world and then you need to get off for whatever reason. You can just do it that way, but that doesn't actually matter when it comes to death. So when you die, even if you load up the game the next day, as far as I know anyway, when you die you will actually go back to the previous proper save using either Savior Schnapps, using a bed, or from a cutscene. So just keep that in mind. Saving and quitting is useful, but it does have its drawbacks too. Now, something else very handy to know when it comes to actually making potions, whether it is Savior Schnapps or just any, is that there is a prepare button, which as far as I remember doesn't directly get told to you during the tutorial, because the game actually teaches you to pick the ingredients from your inventory yourself. But when you're looking at the recipe book, if you just press prepare, it will automatically get those ingredients ready. Now, it is worth keeping in mind though, doing that is really good if you know you've got fresh ingredients, but when you do this, it won't pick the freshest ingredients, it'll just pick essentially any. So just keep that in mind. If you've got a bunch of ingredients that you've had for like a couple of days in game, it'll probably use those instead, and therefore your brew won't actually be as good as if you're using fresh ingredients. So it's good to know, but also if you do need to make sure you're making like a strong potion, just make sure you don't have any old ingredients on you, because they do deteriorate over time. Now, that actually leads me perfectly into the next tip, because that is about how you're collecting these ingredients. And in my opinion, it is not actually worth collecting random plants that you find, because like I said, their condition will worsen over time. So it's pretty easy to go out into the open world and see a new plant that you haven't found before. And in most other games, I know for myself, I just kind of pick up most of the things that I see, and I was doing the same in this game early on, only to find out that they do deteriorate pretty damn quick. And in my opinion, it is just best to go and actually get these when you know that you're going to be brewing. Now, it's kind of different when it comes to, for example, stuff like the belladonna that I mentioned, which is very rare. In that case, it's worth picking that up anyway. But when it comes to stuff, for example, like nettle, which is literally just anywhere that you go, I don't think it's worth picking that stuff up, because like I said, it will just worsen over time and it will make your potions weaker. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are new to the channel and you are interested in more KCD2 content, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. There is plenty more content on the way. I'm also going to be covering Avowed over the next few days too, so keep your eyes peeled for more. Now, something else that I only know because the devs mentioned this is not something that I found out in game. Being encumbered will actually train your strength if you do it for long enough, and so it's actually not that bad of an idea to be encumbered in this game, unlike most other games that you play. For me, this always goes back to the classic of Skyrim, where I found myself being encumbered so much, carrying around dragon bones and stuff like that. And in that game, it's obviously very bad. You walk super slow, you can't really jump, you can't sprint, and you can't even fast travel. So not only in Skyrim, but just like any open world game, being encumbered is generally a really bad thing. But in this game, it's actually not as bad because yes, you still get the drawbacks, but you will train your strength in doing so. And eventually this allows you to level up that skill. You can spend skill points on whatever skills you need, and it will also allow you to carry more in the future. So just keep that in mind. If you are encumbered and you know that it's only going to be for a little bit, it's not worth just dropping a bunch of stuff. Just sort of bear with it and you will actually train your strength, which is a pretty cool touch from the developers. Now, the next tip I have, which is I guess kind of two tips in one, it's to do with eating in this game and essentially just food and the way that food works. Now, the first thing you want to keep in mind is that overeating will give you a debuff. So it's not worth just eating a whole heap of stuff in order to get your nourishment back up. If you're down at like 20 or 30%, you're going to have to do it slowly, because if you just try to go straight back to 100, you will get a slight debuff. And something else that's definitely worth noting as well is that eating foods in bad condition, especially when they are like super old, they will actually poison you and you can eventually die from it. Because of that, it is definitely worth cooking and especially drying your foods as well, because that will generally nourish you more. If you cook your food, it is better than just eating raw ingredients, obviously, and drying food generally makes them last a hell of a lot longer, meaning you can kind of just stack them in your inventory and you don't have to worry about them, compared to carrying around like raw meat or raw vegetables where they will go off pretty damn quick. If your food is off, honestly, just throw it away. It's not worth getting a little bit of nourishment from it at the risk of poisoning yourself. I literally died at one point from food poisoning, and it was in the middle of a pretty intense side mission that I was doing. So I kind of learned this the hard way, even though I knew doing that would poison me, but I didn't realize how quickly it would kill me. So yeah, if your food is off, honestly, just throw it away. It is not worth the risk. Now, the second last tip that I've got for this one is to do with haggling, and it is honestly always worth haggling for your prices. Not only does this give you XP towards your speech, it is obviously just cheaper. You are pretty much always going to haggle the vendors down. As long as you're doing it properly, what I generally tend to do is just go down by about 4 or 5 clicks on that little scale there. It doesn't matter how much money we're talking about. It is generally just, 4 or 5 down. And it also depends on your reputation with that vendor. If they're like a friend of yours, for example, then you can probably do it a bit more. And if they hate you, then I maybe wouldn't actually bother, because generally speaking, they won't accept your negotiations. But for most people, if you just go down about 4 or 5 notches on that little bar there, they will then give you a bit of a counter offer. And then if you essentially just meet them in the middle, they will almost always accept that, meaning that one, you're getting stuff cheaper, and that's obviously always a good thing. But like I said, that will actually train your speech, meaning that one, you can increase your haggle skill and eventually get stuff even cheaper, and two, you can also train your speech when it comes to like intimidating people and all those sorts of things too. So if you're buying or selling something, literally just always haggle. It is 100% worth it, even if you're in a bit of a rush. Now, the last tip, and this is honestly the most important tip in this video, I actually almost made an entire video about this alone. This is to do with essentially when you pick and choose to do certain missions, whether those are main quests or even side quests, because it is very important when you choose to do them. If you know that you're not really ready to start a mission, but you think, hey, maybe I'll just talk to this guy, I'll pick up the quest, and then I'll go out for, 4 or 5 days and do whatever I need to do, and eventually get back to that side quest. In some cases, that's completely fine, but in certain cases, that will not sit with those characters. They will sometimes delete the quest, meaning that they will just refuse to talk to you. Even if you go back and say, hey, I want to do that thing we were going to do, they will just refuse to give it to you, and it means that certain quests can actually just be permanently erased from the game. And like I said, this isn't just side quests. I had this happen to me in a freaking main quest that, yes, it was optional, so there is another workaround for me to do this, but I spent a good hour, maybe 2 hours doing this quest. I got to a certain part and I needed to actually get some materials and some health and stuff before I went back and did it. So I went back to what I was doing. I grinded a little bit, got some items, and then I went back and they literally refused to talk to me. So if you're not set on doing a mission right now, I honestly think just don't enter into a conversation with someone you know is going to give you a quest. Like I said, sometimes it might work out completely fine, but I honestly think it is not worth the risk, because I genuinely lost probably close to 2 hours, if not even more, in the actual main quest, and that is definitely not something you guys want to be doing. But that is it for some very basic tips and tricks when it comes to, I guess, some more beginner knowledge in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Hopefully that helped you guys out, and if it did, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more content. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.